I'm Jody Wood-Putnam, and I'm a master gardener here. And as Julie said, we support the extension office here and help expand the workforce to be able to help y'all learn good gardening practices. I'm going to talk to you about how you can attract butterflies to your landscape. First of all, in Florida here, we have over 180 different types of butterflies. And in the Panhandle here, just Panhandle itself, we have over 120. That makes us a really great place that we can butterfly garden because we have such a wide variety of butterflies. So, but in order to attract these butterflies, you have to have the diversity of plants that will attract them. Let's see. Okay. Attracting butterflies to your garden, it doesn't have to be a very large garden to be productive. If you plan your garden well to have the things that they need, you can do that in a fairly small area. You do need to be able to provide to them food, not only for the butterfly, but also for the caterpillar. You need to provide shelter and cover. And shelter and cover generally use leaves or shrubbery. A lot of them, like the edges and bark and stuff like that, they'll use as area for cover. And water. And generally here in Panama City, water is not an issue. We've got a lot of humidity. There's usually areas that have water standing. Unfortunately for mosquitoes and such, that's the case. But it does serve as water source for the butterflies. But you may want to have a shallow bowl with some gravel in it or such if we have a drought that can provide for them. A well-planned garden will cater to a variety of butterflies. And what you plant in there will influence not only the butterflies that come to your garden, but the ones that stay, and as Julie say, lay their eggs and then hatch, and the process starts again. As Julie had mentioned, the life cycle of the butterfly has 4 phases: the egg, the larva, pupa, and adult. The food requirements for the adults and for the caterpillars are different. Adult butterflies they're generally not that picky. They'll feed off of a lot of different flowers, nectar, wide range of them. Caterpillars, however, feed on very specific plants, and their host plants, in some cases, are very, very limited. They may only feed on one particular plant, and so if that particular plant is not around, they're not able to reproduce. So, as this guy here says, this is the caterpillar for the spice bush butterfly. It needs to be fed too. And this guy here, you may have all sorts of flowers in your yard, but if you don't have the bays or sassafras in the yard, then this guy won't be able to grow. The caterpillar won't have anything to eat. So, pentas and fire spike. As you can see here, we got a monarch butterfly on the pentas and a monarch butterfly on the fire spike. They feed on all sorts of nectar sources, but when it comes down to laying their eggs, they only lay their eggs on the milkweed families, different milkweeds. And that's something that's getting a lot of popularity now, and people are understanding that. And so you've seen people starting to plant milkweeds to help with the monarchs who there's been a large decrease in their population in the recent years. And so you see people trying to help the monarch butterflies out by planting milkweeds. But there are a lot of other butterflies, and they all have their different needs. This right here is butterfly bush, and you'll see it here. It's providing nectar for these tiger swallowtails. And the tiger swallowtails, they'll feed off a lot of different plants. But when it comes to laying their eggs and for their larval host plants, you need a black cherry, an ash, a tulip tree, or perhaps a sweet bay magnolia. Oh, by the way, that butterfly bush, well, it does say that it has a name in there that it's a butterfly bush. It's not a native plant, and it's not a larval host plant for any of our American butterflies. So it's kind of a interesting name to have for it, but they do like the nectar from the flowers. This is the spice bush butterfly, and this one you'll see here in pictures. It's feeding on our swamp dogwood, and it's feeding on that butterfly bush again. But if you wanted to have lay eggs and to reproduce, we need some things from the pipevine family, some of our native pipevines or Virginia snakeroot. This is our giant swallowtail butterfly, which is absolutely gorgeous. It's a big, gigantic butterfly. It's beautiful. Now this one, it actually is fortunate in that it's not so picky that it just needs our native plants like the hog plant or the Hercules club. This one actually can adapt, and it has adapted to our oranges, our citrus fruits. And so you'll actually see this caterpillar on a lot of our orange groves. They'll call them orange dogs, the caterpillars of these sometimes. And they're very interesting caterpillars, and they've actually adapted to look like the kind of the remains of birds. So you'll see them on the leaf, and it's kind of hard to tell that's a caterpillar sometimes. So that's a neat survival mechanism, yes. Next one. Okay, there you go. The long-tailed skipper here. I'll see him on this African blue basil, and there's another one on a Cuphea. But then again, in order to reproduce, you need to have something from the Fabaceae family, like the American wisteria, or the Gaillardia species, the milk pea, or the butterfly pea. And here we have the Palmeides swallowtail. Once again, it has its own needs. This one particularly needs the bangs. And this is a very common one. Julie showed us quite a few pictures of this. This is our Gulf fritillary. This one's very common here. We'll see it a lot. But in order for it to reproduce, it needs to have something from the passion flower family. And we have like the maypops or the yellow passion flower will serve as host plants for that. This is our state butterfly, the zebra longwing. And this is a beautiful butterfly. And I know last year I saw a whole bunch of these actually. I hadn't seen them, very many of them until last year. But once again, they use passion flower. So if you plant that passion flower in your yard, it can serve as a host plant not only for that Gulf fritillary, but this zebra longwing, and also for this variegated fritillary butterfly. So that serves as a host plant for several butterflies. So you get a lot of bang for your buck by planting that vine. This one here also will lay its eggs on violets. This is our common Buckeye, and this one will lay its eggs on plantains and frog fruits and twin flowers. Some things that a lot of people regard as weeds. This guy here, he'll use it for, that's what he needs for his eggs. And then we've got the cloudless sulfur here that uses plants from the senna family. And this one, both native and also non-native plants. And I've got here the gray hair streak, and this one we'll use as host plants, clover, milk pea, partridge pea, several different plants. So the theme here is that we have a lot of different butterflies. We're real fortunate to have these different butterflies, but they all have different host plant needs. So to attract these butterflies to your garden, you need to have those host plants around as well as providing nectar plants. So for the milkweeds, or for the monarch butterfly, you need milkweeds. And we have a bunch of native milkweeds. So a lot of people don't realize that. And usually what you see in a lot of stores is just tropical milkweed, but there's actually a bunch of native milkweeds that grow in different conditions. Some of them like moist areas, like the Paranus that you'll see out in our garden. Some of them like dry areas and sandy areas like the butterfly weed. So there's a wide variety of milkweeds out there for different environments. And not only is that the host plant for the monarch butterfly, but it's also the host plant for the queen, which is, you'll see a picture down there, or over here maybe you can tell a little bit better, which looks a lot like the monarch butterfly, but it is different. The cloudless sulfur butterfly, that one likes the different sennas and the cassias. One example here, and yes, I do have a pointer. You can see here, actually, these are the caterpillars here of our cloudless sulfur butterfly that's feeding on the candlestick cassia. And we have one of those out in our demo garden that you'll be able to see. But beautiful flowers. And this is actually a non-native that they will lay their eggs on. And it's cool too here with these. If they lay their eggs, or if they feed on the flowers, they're yellow. But if they feed on the leaves, they'll be green, which is really cool. So that's a neat thing to see. But beautiful bush. This is one of our native plants that they'll use as a host plant. And this is the partridge pea. And this is a really great plant. Plants for the common Buckeye include the frog fruit here. And that's a very small, low ground cover. And you'll see that around in a lot of mainly moist areas. And also the Texas petunia, and or the wild petunia. And we have some of those that will be given away here later on for those that would like to try them in your yard. And you can see here the colors are a little better on that one. Host plants for the Gulf fritillary. We have the maypop, which is a beautiful, beautiful flower. It's got these really pretty, beautiful purple, white flowers that are just absolutely spectacular. But also in the woods, if you look carefully, we have this native yellow passion flower that's got small flowers that you'll see growing out in a lot of our bushes and trees around, or bushes and shrub area around here. There we are. Zebra swallowtail. It uses host plants, several pawpaws. Pawpaws generally like kind of sandy, well-drained area of soils. And so you'll see that's the habitat that the tiger swallowtails are usually found in. And, of course, that's where the host plants found it. Black swallowtail. It uses a lot of the parsley, fennel, are good host plants for this one. And the Atala butterfly, which is one that we actually don't have here in North Florida. It's more of a South Florida butterfly, but it uses the Coontie as a host plant. And this is a really good example of a case where at one time the Coonties had been harvested, and with development to South Florida, there weren't as many of them around, and there was a decline in the Atala butterfly population. But then when people started planting them again and using them for different road projects and things like that, the butterfly started coming back. So that's what's showing the correlation between the host plant and the butterflies. And here's some of the other examples. There's a lot of them, not only just the trees and the shrubs, but a lot of our trees, like the oak trees and cedars and sand pines, are host plants for a lot of our butterflies. And the mustards and the clover, a lot of things that are the ground covers, you'll see are host plants. And some of the grasses are actually host plants for several of our butterflies. I actually added in here one I just thought was very fascinating, is we actually have a butterfly that is carnivorous, actually. And it eats aphids on smilax. Not that I'm promoting people to plant smilax. But if you have a wild area with smilax, that might be something you might want to consider leaving. So, nectar plants that you can plant. There are many, many of them. As I said, butterflies, they don't care. They like lots of different flowers. The variety is a key aspect of that. Butterflies, they have different needs according to what the butterfly is. Like, for instance, the common Buckeye or the long-tailed skipper, they will have 3 different generations in a year. And so they may end up having a flight season. Anytime it's warm, they may be out there flying around all throughout the year. So in the wintertime, we have a warm spell. You may have long-tailed skippers out, and they're looking for nectar. So having those nectar plants out there and available for them in the wintertime is something that you may want to provide in your butterfly garden. The banded hairstreak, that one only has 1 generation per year, and that's in the March and May time period. So if you want to attract those butterflies to the garden, you need to be able to have a nectar source for them during that time period. And the Eastern Tiger Swallowtails, though, they're another example that may have multiple generations through a year. And you may see them flying through the February to November time period. So some good flowers that you can have in your garden to provide nectar sources. The African iris is a great one. It provides a nice platform for the butterflies. They enjoy that one. And it's also evergreen, grows to be 2 to 4 foot in height. A lot of these you'll see we'll have out in the butterfly garden, and just for this reason that they are such good plants. The beach sunflower. This is a great one. Only gets to be about 1 to 3 foot in height. Has these flowers that bloom almost all year long until we get a really hard winter, and then they'll die back. Black-eyed Susies. We have a wide variety of Rebecchias out there, and they'll flower for quite a long time period. We have annual ones as well as perennial ones, and they're great butterfly plants. Blanket flower. This or the Gaillardia. This is a great one for dry, sandy conditions. And so if you have an area near the beach, a very high salt tolerance also, it's a great one for butterflies. Bottle brush. This one is actually this picture right here. I have on a bottle brush in my yard. It has a bunch of fritillaries. I've seen my bottle brush covered with the fritillaries, and at one time last fall, I had monarch butterflies. I'd have like 4 or 5 monarchs on one bottle brush flower. I mean, it was just spectacular. I have a video I put on Facebook that just showed all these butterflies all flying around. It was amazing. But this one is a magnet for butterflies. They love it. Bees also, really great plant. It's evergreen, beautiful flowers, and so the butterflies love it. Coreopsis. We have a bunch of native Coreopsis. We have the one pink one here, which is our swamp Coreopsis. But then we also have a bunch of yellow ones also, great butterfly plants. Fire spike. We've got a bunch of these that we're going to be giving away. This is a great one because it blooms in the fall and through toward a lot of the winter time. So this provides a really great plant for like when the monarchs come back in the fall. It's got these beautiful red flowers, and see there you can see a bunch of monarchs all feeding off of it here, as well as up there you see a sulfur butterfly. They love them too. Garlic chives are great plants. They're evergreen, low plant to the ground. They also are edible, so that gives you a double whammy there. Goldenrod. Goldenrods are great. They are not the thing that causes you to have your hay fever. That's actually the ragweed that blooms at the same time period, but because the goldenrod is so, you see them and they're blooming and they're bright, people blame them. So this poor plant, it's gotten a bad rap, but they're great, and they'll grow to 2 to 6 foot tall, and some of them are perennial and die back to the ground. Some of them do stay evergreen now. Bee balm and our Monardas. We have a native bee balm, the horsemint, dotted horsemint over there. And there's also a bunch of non-native ones that are great plants for nectar for the butterflies. Native azaleas, these guys are beautiful. It's a really beautiful shrub that they'll enjoy in the early spring. And there's pink ones as well as the yellow flowering ones, as well as some cultivars. Pentas is another one that the butterflies really enjoy, and they come in a wide variety of colors, from pinks and lavenders and reds and whites, and they're very well behaved. They'll generally die back in the winter, but if we have a very mild winter, they may not. And last year, all of mine survived through, and they're great plants. Purple coneflower. This is a native that is got these beautiful flowers. One thing I will suggest, though, with this one is that if you can get our native ecotype, that's important. Ones that are native to Florida, because, like, for instance, this plant here has a wide range that it comes from. So if you get plants that are, from Texas or the Midwest or somewhere like that, then it may not grow as well as those that are from these areas. Redbud is a great native tree, and it blooms in early spring. It gets to be 20 to 30 foot tall in height, and it's really a beautiful tree. It blooms before the leaves come out, which make it pretty spectacular. St. John's wort. We have a wide variety of the Hypericums, and they all have yellow flowers. They have various heights. Some of them very low to the ground, only get to be like 6 inches or so, and some get quite, 6 feet, 8 feet tall. But they're beautiful, and the butterflies enjoy them. Salvias. There's a wide variety. There's so many different salvias, and we have a couple of native ones. I think we have some of them back there that will be given away. Their heights vary, but they're really great nectar plants for the butterfly also. And we have Stokes aster, which this is a native plant that it's very well behaved. It's mostly evergreen, and will keep a nice compact growth pattern to it. And then it sends up these stalks that have these really beautiful powder blue flowers. And you can see that the blue is spectacular. They've just started flowering out in the demo garden, so you'll be able to see those. But they only get to be about 1 to 2 feet in height, and they're just beautiful. And sunshine mimosa. This is a ground cover, and this is something that if you want to try a substitute for grass, perhaps, or that this is a possible ground cover that you can use that is attractive to the pollinators, to the butterflies and bees and such, and also forms a nice ground cover. If you go over to St. Joe, Port St. Joe, near the lighthouse, near that area, there's a field over there that's got a lot of these, and really pretty when you have this whole field that has the pink powder puff flowers blooming on them. And this one's also the host plant for the little sulfur butterfly. Swamp hibiscus. This is a beautiful, spectacular flower. This one has big old flowers that are, like about this big. They're gorgeous, bright red. They'll die back in the winter all the way to ground, and they'll come up to like 7-foot height within the one season, and you'll have these beautiful flowers off of them. And then I think this is my last flower that I'm going to suggest to you for a nectar plant is the giant ironweed. It gets to be about 3 to 7 feet tall, and it'll have masses of these purple flowers that are very attractive to the butterflies. This one dies back again, but then it'll come back to the full height in the spring through the summer. So general comments when you plan your garden is you want to make sure that you pick the right plant for the right place. If you have let's say a swamp milkweed that grows naturally in a swamp area, and you put them in a dry, sandy area, it's a native plant. You say, oh, it's native, it'll survive if I just plant it. No, it needs also similar conditions to what it has out in nature. So it needs something that's a moist type environment like it has out in nature. Same with that butterfly weed, that one I told you, that the milkweed that likes dry, sandy, well-drained conditions. If you put it in a normal garden soil conditions that you're sprinkling regularly, it may not do so well. And actually, I can tell you it doesn't, because I tried that, and mine died. And anyway, so you need to make sure you plant the plants according to what their conditions are. Like the ones I gave you, and I think you have them all in your hand out there, I gave you the moisture and as well as the sun. If they like sun or shade conditions, again, something that likes full sun, you plant it in the shade, it's not going to do well. So you want to plant them in the right places. You may need to check and see what your soil conditions are too. For some plants, there are some that like very acidic conditions and some that are alkaline, and so you may want to see what your soil conditions are. So you may need a soil test. So look at your the plant, what its conditions that it needs for growing. Look at what height it's going to end up being. If it's going to be an 8-foot plant, and you want to put it in front of your bed, that might not be so good. It may be something you want to put in the back of your bed. Or if you have a 30-foot tree, you're not going to put it right up next to your house. So consider the mature height and width of the plants too. Use your contrast to colors and texture of the foliage to your benefit. You know, if you have plants that have broad leaves and kind of frilly leaves and different colors of greens and that you kind of put them together to benefit, those contrasts can be very attractive even when they're not blooming. And so that's something you may want to try. Consider using native plants, and you'll see a lot of the host plants are native plants because the butterflies and the plants have evolved together, and that's what they need primarily, although some, like I mentioned, the giant swallowtail has adapted to non-natives, but most of them do need native plants for their host plants. Native plants are also adapted to our environment. If you plant them in the right place, as I've mentioned before, so they can be very maintenance-free. Generally, in designing your garden, I like to plant large things in the middle or in the back, and then go outward to smaller things. That way you're maximizing the light that all the different plants get, as well as people being able to see all the plants. And another thing is you want to make sure that you consider what the garden will look like in the wintertime, because you may have all deciduous things that die back in the wintertime, and then all of a sudden you've just got a dead, nothing brown area. So consider incorporating some evergreen, I call it the evergreen backbone, or structure to your garden. You want to use both nectar and larval host plants. For butterflies, generally the best thing is to plant in sun or partial sun conditions, because most of our butterflies require heat or warmth to be able to fly. And so those are the areas you'll see them mostly in. There's some that'll get into partial shade conditions, but most of them like sun. You want to select plants to bloom at the different times throughout the year so that you have them for the time periods when they come. Like, for instance, those long-tailed skippers that you may see all year long. So you want to have things blooming pretty much all year for those guys. Planting groupings. Julie mentioned that earlier with the, what was yours? It was parsley, I believe it was. That one parsley plant is probably not good. 3 parsley plants you're getting there. And same with milkweed. You don't want just one milkweed, because what happens is Monarch comes and you've got one milkweed and it's going to get demolished. So you want to have enough for the butterflies. I suggest planting your garden on paper. That is very helpful to really make it look good. I have to say I'm not the best one for doing this, because I see plants that I just got to have, and I've always managed to find a place for them so far. So that's good. And the other thing is, don't be hasty in removing weeds. Because sometimes those weeds, or what you consider weeds, actually may be host plants for the very butterflies that you're trying to attract. So this is the design I'd done originally for the butterfly garden out front here. And we tried to follow this design, and we mostly did. Some of the plants we had a little more difficulty in finding. But the main thing, actually, before I get there, when I did this design, I was just going to tell you that when I started this design, I didn't just start placing plants here. What I did when I started this design is I did this. I took the evergreen plants, and I put them in and planned them out, because I wanted to have, get a picture of what it would look like in the wintertime when all these other things died back, all the plants that died back to the ground. I wanted to make sure that there was enough there that it looks attractive even in the wintertime. So over here, I've got an evergreen bottle brush, and here I've got an evergreen kumquat that are going to be big, the backbone for each of these beds here. And I also have, like here, some Coonties that I put in there that add that evergreen structure in the wintertime and make the beds look like they're full. And here I got some hard structure of some trellises that we put our vines in. So I designed what it was going to look like in the wintertime first. So then I added everything else. And so I added everything else. And then by the time we had a similar class last year, by the time we had that, things had moved around, or maybe they didn't get quite planted in quite the right place. So this is actually what we ended up with, which is a little different, but mostly the same of what was designed. And this year, Johnny will tell you, but it's actually changed even more. Did you have a question?
Yeah, I was just wondering if these follow a lot of what you were telling us for like new people to go by.
Yeah, they do, exactly. That's exactly.
You have something blooming all year.
Yep, that's exactly what I did on that. Is I have a combination of host plants as well as larval plants, and this falls exactly. See here, we got actually the L's here are larval host plants for the different caterpillars. We've got the big things in the middle, going out to smaller things as you go out. I actually put in the walkways here so that you had more areas where you could actually see the garden and see the plants and see when we have caterpillars and such. That's why I put those in there. But yeah, I tried to use exactly everything I was telling you to do in here. So I have the plan for the winter, everything else. So yes. Yes.
What would be the area? How much footage do you have for this?
Oh, I don't remember. Do you remember, Johnny?
Oh, 48 feet long, 16 feet wide.
Yeah, Johnny gave me the dimensions, and I went from there. And originally, she gave me the whole entire area. And as I said, I broke it up because I wanted, if you had just the one big area, you wouldn't be able to get into here very easily to see this. So I broke it up into the 3 beds is what I did, and that was the reason for that.
And the width was 16 feet.
Yeah, but Johnny will go through that. But I'm limited, of course, of what number of plants that we can put in here because there's a lot of other things. And depending on where you live, if you live in an area that's got a lot of sandy, more of the sand hills and stuff, you might have zebra swallowtails. We don't have them down here, but if you live up north in a more sandy area, you may have the zebra tail. So you may want to have a pawpaw in here because that's the host plant for the zebra swallowtail. But, so I didn't put it in here because I figured our odds of getting a zebra swallowtail are probably not so good. But that's another key thing. If you see butterflies in your area and you can identify them, go look up and see what their host plants are. And then you can go out and plant those in your garden. So, any other questions about the design here? Okay. Weeds. Okay, guys. Is this a weed? How many people think this is a weed?
Depends on where it is.
Okay, that's the thing. It depends on where it is. And in my garden, I count it a weed. Because in my garden, I have puppy dogs. I have dogs. And I take them for walks. And these guys have these seeds that attach onto my dogs. And it's a bear to get them off. However, you'll notice here, it's hard to tell. There's a butterfly here. There's a butterfly there. There's a butterfly actually up here. These guys, the butterflies, love them. They love them. So if you have a wild area or an area in the very back of your garden that nobody sees, you may want to consider leaving these guys because the butterflies really do love them. So, yeah, maybe weed, maybe not. As somebody said, I think it depends on where they're at. Okay, how about this one? Groundsel bush or saltbush. Is that a weed?
No.
I don't think so either. In my yard, I love this guy. And this is, it grows really well in salty conditions. And it'll grow right up into the shoreline. It's a shrub that gets probably about 8 feet tall, I'd say. But the butterflies absolutely love it. And it blooms right when the monarchs are coming through. And you'll see here, look at all these butterflies. They just swarm it. So this one's a great one, I think. But it is not the prettiest, most attractive shrub until it blooms. And then you have all the butterflies. So. But then it's absolutely gorgeous. What about this guy? Butterfly pea. This is actually a vine that looks really weedy and everything, and it'll grow up through your plants. I don't think so either. To me, I think that is absolutely beautiful, and I love that plant. And when it blooms, it's gorgeous. And it's also the host plant for this guy right here, the long-winged skipper. This is a host plant for him, so it's a great butterfly. So great one to have. And as Julie said, if you're gardening for butterflies, don't worry about the leaves. Instead, think of it as an opportunity. And that's what I do. I go around, and when I'm looking at my host plants and everything, I see weed or eaten leaves. I'm like, ooh, 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 and I start looking for caterpillars. Because that means you're successful. That's actually a sign of success. And in maintenance for your garden, if you do select the right plant for that place, your maintenance should be minimal. You should be able to, it should be very minimal. You'll just want to fertilize according to the needs of what your soil test comes back. One thing for a butterfly garden, and I cringe every time I hear somebody talk about spraying, like for instance, their milkweed because they've got aphids. I'm like, oh, because when you're doing that, you're killing the aphids, but you may also be killing your butterfly larvae, the caterpillars. Yeah. So be careful of using pesticides. So that's just something to be careful about. Deadhead is another thing you may want to do. Is deadheading. If you may want to pinch the old blooms of your flowers, because a lot of times if you do that, it promotes them to rebloom again. So that way you can get more bang for your buck for your nectar plants. And these are just some references. And I think you've got a handout that has a bunch of most of these. IFAS, if you go to the EDIS, what does EDIS stand for? Education, electronic database, something like that. Information system. We'll call it that. If you Google EDIS and get to the IFAS EDIS site, it's a wonderful source of publications of all sorts of things. And if you type in butterfly, you'll get some really great articles of different butterfly things, butterfly plants, butterfly gardening, butterflies we have in our areas. So feel free to go on there. And with that, I just want to say thank you all. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
Questions? Yes.
You were talking about the mimosa.
Yes.
Is that a perennial?
It is perennial.
It is perennial.
Yep, it's a Mimosa strigosa. That's the ground cover powder puff flower. It is perennial.
Okay.
So it's great, and it will
It will spread out.
spread out. Yep.
Sun?
And it's a sun plant.
Okay.
It's really nice one. Yes.
Question on that one also. What kind of traffic does it take? Step and walk on it, or
It takes some traffic, but I don't know, if it's the same as if you were on it a lot. But it does take quite a bit of traffic. I've seen, like for instance, at St. Joe, and I've seen other areas as you go down further south. They'll take some, but occasional won't kill it. But I wouldn't use it as a normal. No. Yes. Yes.
I kind of have two questions. I keep bees as well. Do they compete over the same stuff?
I think if you plant for butterflies, you're planting for bees too. I think they're very complementary. Yeah.
Okay. And since I have a garden in the backyard, would it be beneficial to do a butterfly garden in the backyard with it, or to separate it and put it in the front? Because I don't want my garden heat.
The thing is, again, and each of these plants, when you say the garden eatens,
Yes. Well,
like for instance, the monarch butterfly won't lay its eggs, and the caterpillars won't be eating your garden because they only lay their eggs and they only eat milkweed. Most of these plants that I'm talking about here, there are some moths and stuff that eat your vegetables. Yeah, and there's one I mentioned that was that eats mustards or whatever. that's the host plants, the mustards. So that may go to some of your mustard family plants. So there are some. So it won't get them eating most of it, but flowers in general could attract those moths, you know. So I don't know an answer for that, but the host plants won't. And that one's kind of a, but also having those flowers brings them there for pollination of your crops too. So it's a let me get him first. He had his hand up. Yes.
You mentioned pesticides briefly. In this area, we have mosquito spray.
Yes.
Which, you know, it's necessary. But how does that affect?
Well, mostly with the mosquito spraying, it's mostly at nighttime, and butterflies are only active during the daytime. So for the butterflies, I think that's the reason that they do spray at night generally, is when it's dark, is so that it's, and also for the bees. I have to say I worry about the moths and some of the other things that are active at nighttime, but you know, most of the butterflies, they're overnighting in you know, within trees and foliage and stuff like that, and so, you know, hopefully it would have minimal, but I don't know. I just don't know enough about that.
I'm thinking more about, you know, the host plants, the caterpillars.
Oh, as far as the host plants, I don't know.
It's a fog, and it's going to fall out.
It is, but it generally goes only about 300 foot from where they're doing, and then it settles down to those low wet areas where the mosquitoes are breeding. So, I mean, if you put your butterfly garden right on the edge of the road and the right of way where you're really not supposed to plant, then sure, you may see some.
And I also heard, as we had someone come in and do something for our beekeepers, the morning dew washes it off, so it kills mosquitoes. They do most of their activity at night, and they're laying eggs and stuff. So that's why they spray at night. The bees and the butterflies are not active. So.
Yeah. Oh, Detlef had a question. No.
I was going to mention in your vegetable garden, there's only probably a couple of, well, one is a moth, it's a sphinx moth larva, which is a tomato hornworm, and it gets pretty big, so you can't miss it. I pick them off and feed them to the chickens. There's another one in the fall, if you plant cabbage and such. It's a white cabbage butterfly that has a green caterpillar. Those are the most common around here. And for larvae of that kind, you can spray a biological called BT. It's not harmful, it doesn't hurt any other insects. But just when a caterpillar feeds on it, it gets in their gut and it kills.
Good information there. Yes.
I plant herbs, veggies, and flowers all together, and they are so happy.
Yay.
I wouldn't hesitate in a heartbeat. Your marigolds put off some sort of, like chrysanthemums, some sort of repellent that help your tomatoes or green beans or whatever you plant them with. I love my marigolds and the berries. And y'all should have been at the Zika meeting back last September, and they would have explained how they're using biologicals that aren't harmful to our environment, as well as putting out the little fish and red spots and a granular that I'm big on it. So that
the BT you mentioned, the Bacillus thuringiensis,
yes,
and
that's the one.
It's an Israeliensis
Yeah.
version that only targets the fly and mosquito larvae instead of the caterpillar. There's different forms of BT. So one is for, one that we use is for the mosquitoes and a couple of flies, and then there's a totally different form that's used for caterpillar management, and it's used like a vegetable garden. So right.
So environmentally friendly at any cost.
Yeah. Well, and the key, what you mentioned about planting everything, diversity is really a key aspect of a successful butterfly garden. You know, if you just have one plant, you're not going to be very successful in having things blooming, when the butterflies need it, or having the host plants that they need. So diversity is very key. So with that, yes?
I was wondering, if do you, basically for the butterflies, what do you think would work really best? Like, which areas should I have the host plants and the nectar plants? Should I have them separate or just
I'd put them together. Yeah, I'd have them in the same area. And then that way it's, you know, a lot of times they're more attractive that way. You know, you'll have the butterflies, nectar plants flowering as well as some of the host plants that may not flower as pretty.
Okay.
So any other? Okay, great. Thank you. One last. Do I have time? Okay.
Bigger sticks native to the next thing.
Do what?
Bigger sticks are native.
Yes, they are. They are native. The Biden's alba, the beggar stick, the one I mentioned, whether or not it was a weed or not, it is a native plant. So it is good. All right. Thank you all very much. Oh. Well, the hydrangeas, believe it or not, it depends what type of flower you have, because if you have the big mop caps, most of those are infertile flowers. So what you're seeing actually with the flower itself is the smaller, like the lace caps and stuff. That's what has pollens. And, yeah, it probably doesn't have that much of a pollen source for them, but they're beautiful. So, all right. Thank you very much.